Hello everybody. So today I'm going to show you a compilation of holiday cookies and treats that I love to make and are perfect homemade gifts. You can put these in cookie tins, you can put this in gift boxes, mason jars, bows, ribbons. It's so fun, festive, and I think it can be budget friendly. And the best part is that it's homemade with love. Here we go. Today I am making condensed milk truffles. I'm going to be using one 14-ounce can of condensed milk and unsweetened cocoa powder. And a good ratio for this is a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 parts sweetened condensed milk, 1 part cocoa powder. So here I've added my sweetened condensed milk. I'm going to microwave it for 30 to 45 seconds. And I also added an 1/8 teaspoon of sea salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's optional. Now I'm going to add my unsweetened cocoa powder, and I'm going to do this by thirds. I'm going to add a third of it, sift it, mix it, and just repeat the process. Now that everything is combined, I am going to dust a dish that I lined with saran wrap or cling film. You want to dust it with more cocoa powder, then add the mixture, dust it again, and close it and refrigerate it for 1 hour to allow it to set. Once the truffles are set, you'll want to dust your work surface, and then you'll want to remove the truffles from the cling film onto your dusted surface. Then you're going to dust the top and cut into your squares or pieces. You just want to make sure that when handling this mixture, you make sure you dust the exterior completely before handling, because it can become sticky and start to melt. Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be making candied pecans. I was visiting a friend recently and we wanted something to munch on, and she had all the ingredients to make these delicious candied pecans. And here's how I do it. To start, in a large bowl, I am going to add the white of a large egg. and I'm pretty much going to discard the yolk. You could save it for another recipe if you're doing a lot of baking that day, but today I just need the egg white. So I'm going to whisk and beat the egg white until it's a little foamy and fluffy. Now I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 3 tablespoons of light brown sugar, and 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. I'm also going to be adding a half teaspoon of salt, and this is just fine table salt. I'm also going to be adding 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And after adding my extract, I am going to whisk and beat my egg whites with the other ingredients until it is frothy, foamy, and pale. You really want to combine everything well. Okay, so now I'm going to add pecans. You can add the nuts of your choice. You could do a combination of maybe almonds, walnuts, peanuts, pecans. It's all up to you. So I'm going to make sure my pecans are combined and coated well. And now I'm going to take a lined baking sheet. I'm using a Silpat today, and I am going to spray a little bit of oil. I want to make sure that once my pecans are done, I'll be able to remove them. So if you're using parchment paper, you could also spread a little bit of oil. So now I'm going to spread out all of my coated pecans in a single layer onto my lined baking sheet. I'm going to be baking these in a preheated oven at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for about 25 to 30 minutes. And at the 15-minute mark, I am going to remove my pecans from the oven, and I'm going to toss them and spread them out again. You could do this in 10-minute intervals, but I find doing it once at the 15-minute mark works just fine, but it definitely is up to you. Okay, back into the oven for an additional 10 to 15 minutes. You'll just want to watch them on the last leg of cook time so they don't burn. Okay, so after the last part of cook time, it'll be around 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to remove them from the oven and allow them to set and cool completely for about an hour. It may be longer, but you want to make sure they are cooled completely, and you don't want to move them around. Just let them set for 1 hour, and then after they have cooled and set, you'll want to take a wooden spoon and start scraping them up from your baking sheet. It's fairly easy to do this. The coating on these pecans are very delicate, flavorful, warm, spiced, sweet pecans. And take a look at this. It's a beautiful coating, and it's so easy to eat and break into. And it makes the perfect gift. You can store these in a mason jar and give them as a gift. Or you can just serve them and eat them. It's up to you, and they're so good. And it's perfect for your next holiday party, or you know what? Year-round works for me. Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to make a simple walnut cookie. Now, you can replace the walnuts with pecans or the nut of your choice. Either way, it's simple and delicious. To start, I'm going to add 1 stick of softened salted butter to a large bowl. If all you have is unsalted butter, you could just add a half teaspoon of salt to your dry ingredients. So once I add the butter, I'm going to take my fork and sort of beat and whisk it to fluff it up. Now I'm going to add a packed cup of dark brown sugar. You could also use light brown, but I like the flavor of dark brown. I'm also going to add a 1/4 cup of regular sugar and a teaspoon and a half of vanilla, and combine the ingredients together. Now I'm going to add 1 room temperature large egg, and I'm going to cream the ingredients together until they are well combined and almost fluffy. Once my wet ingredients are combined, I'm going to set aside and start working on the dry ingredients. Here I have 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and a ½ teaspoon of salt. I'm going to combine well, and if you are using unsalted butter, you'll want to add a full teaspoon of salt. Now that that is combined, I'm going to add 1 cup of walnuts that I've chopped. It's a rough chop, and you could also substitute this with pecans or the nut of your choice. Okay, so now that that is combined, now I'm going to mix together my wet and dry ingredients, and I'm going to start baking these delicious cookies. Here I have a large baking sheet lined with the Silpat, or you could use parchment paper. Now I'm going to take 2 spoons and scoop out the cookie dough right onto the baking sheet. And you'll want to separate the cookie dough 2 inches apart because they will spread. I'm going to bake my cookies in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 12 to 13 minutes, or until they are done and golden brown. I'm going to allow them to cool. You can place them on a cooling rack. I didn't have one, so you'll just want to let them cool for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then they are ready to be gobbled up. Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be making the Doubletree Hotel cookie recipe. I'm actually only going to make half the recipe, but I will give you full amount. Okay, so I'm only going to make half of the recipe, but I will be giving you the full recipe amounts, and I will also link the recipe resource that I used. Okay, so to start, you will need 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. To that, you will want to add a ½ cup of rolled oats. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt, and a pinch of ground cinnamon. Now I'm just going to mix and combine. And in the original recipe that was posted, or that came out a couple of days ago, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, it does call for mixing everything in a stand mixer. But you know me, I like to do things by hand, and my stand mixer is way over there, so I'm just going to use this. But you definitely can use the original recipe method. Now in a large bowl, let's see here, you're going to want to add a ½ pound of butter, which is 2 sticks of unsalted butter. Actually, in the recipe it said butter, but I'm just going to assume unsalted. Softened butter. You'll need 2 sticks of softened butter. Now I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of light brown sugar, a packed cup that is, and 3/4 and a cup and 1 tablespoon of sugar, of plain granulated sugar. 1 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now I'm just going to add 1 large egg. Actually, the recipe calls for 2 large eggs. That's right, I'm doing half a recipe. So make sure you add 2 large eggs. And you will need 1/4 teaspoon of freshly squeezed lemon juice. Now I'm going to get this all creamed and mixed together. And you want to make sure you're working with softened butter and room temperature eggs. And in the recipe it says to make sure to cream well, especially if you're using a stand mixer. So I'm going to do this for about a minute just to make sure everything is combined, mixed, and creamed well. This is done. Now I'm going to add in my flour mixture. And it does say in the recipe not to overmix, so I'm just sort of gonna kind of fold it and combine. Okay, so this is mixed. Now you are going to want to fold in 1 3/4 cups of chopped walnut. So I'm going to substitute it with some sunflower seeds. And you're going to add 2 2/3 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. And the recipe does call for Nestle's Toll House chocolate chips. Okay, so here's the part where you want to fold these in, but don't over mix. I'm going to use a large scooper because it does say to put 3 tablespoons of the cookie dough per cookie, which gives it that, you know, that larger cookie. So I'm going to do the best I can, but I will be baking these in a 300-degree Fahrenheit oven for 20 to 23 minutes. Okay, so here's kind of what I did. I was gonna do 3 in each row, but I wanna make sure I give them room because I'm not sure how much they'll spread. So for this large baking sheet, I added 6. So I'm gonna put these in an oven. It's a preheated oven at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 23 minutes. Now I'm just going to take these and put them on my cooling rack. Oh, perfect. Okay, so nothing beats a fresh, homemade, oven-baked, warm cookie. Take a look at this. Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be making soft and moist banana bread muffins. Here I have 3/4 of a cup. This is a packed cup of light brown sugar. I actually like to use dark brown sugar, so if I had dark brown, I'd probably be using that. Now, since I already have my sugar in the bowl, I'm just gonna go ahead and add my peeled bananas. This is around 20 ounces of whole bananas that I peeled. Basically, I mean, I bought these and nobody ate them, but if you have regular sized bananas, maybe like medium to large, probably like 4 to 5 would do. It's about a pound, a little over a pound of bananas works well with this recipe. So now I'm just gonna go in and mash all of my ripe bananas, kind of mix it with the sugar. You could also just mash the bananas before adding it to your bowl, but it's gonna be all together anyways. Okay, so this is mashed and combined. So now I'm going to add, well, this kind of got a little melted, but you'll want to add 1 stick of unsalted butter softened. I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 2 large eggs, preferably room temperature, and I'm going to be adding a 1/3 cup of Greek yogurt. So basically someone requested this on Instagram. They DM'd me and I gave them the recipe that I normally use, which is actually my sister's, so shout out to my sister. I thought muffins, they cook a little bit quicker and, you know, I don't know, it's easy. You don't have to slice into it. Everybody gets their own muffin. So you could use this for banana bread as well. So I'm going to mix, combine, whisk, cream it together. Okay, so this is combined. I'm gonna set it aside really quick. Now I'm going to work on my dry ingredients. Here I have 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. To that I'm going to add a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. I've got 1 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm using a fine sea salt. Use what you got. I'm going to give that a mix, and I actually think adding the ground cinnamon to your dry mix disperses it, or it combines a lot better than when you add it to your wet ingredients. So now I'm going to combine my dry with my wet ingredients, give it a mix. Just kind of mix it in there. Okay, so this is mixed. I'm gonna go ahead and start just scooping in my batter. By the way, you guys know how I said this is my sister's recipe? Well, it's loosely based on her recipe because I did switch up and change some ingredients and a little bit of, you know, ratios. I kind of added more ground cinnamon, you know, but for the most part, this is my sister's banana bread recipe. And actually my son, she likes to put walnuts or nuts in her banana bread to make a banana nut bread, and she gave me such a great alternative. For those of you that like nuts, in your banana nut bread, but you're making it nut free. For example, my son has nut allergies, so we had to switch up a lot of the things and a lot of our recipes that had nuts in it because of that. You could add diced apple. That gives you a nice little bite and crunch and kind of replaces the textural, the texture of the nut. So that is an idea. You could also use sunflower seeds. Sometimes I'll add sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds in here, but you know, I'm leaving it out today. So I'm going to put this in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, basically till the toothpick comes out somewhat clean. It's going to be a very tender, moist muffin, so you might have some crumb on the toothpick, but you know. All right, into the oven. My muffins are done. These actually took right at 22 minutes to bake. So 20 to 23 minutes in a preheated oven at 350 degrees seems to work well with these muffins. Okay, so I've placed my muffins on a cooling rack and I did manage to get 18 banana bread muffins. And like I stated earlier, this is a banana bread recipe, so you definitely can bake it in a loaf pan for about 60 to 65 minutes in a loaf pan at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. But I'm going to let these cool for about 15 minutes or so because they're very hot. So I want to show you how tender and soft these banana bread muffins are. Today I'm going to make Biscochitos. Now you guys have requested this for quite some time. It's been around 2 to 3 years that I always get this request, especially around the holidays. So here's a recipe I came up with utilizing an old coworker's recipe. She used to bring this to the office. Sometimes she would make her homemade Biscochitos. Now her recipe did not have orange zest or brandy, which I decided to add to my recipe after doing some research online. I'm not sure which way is the original or authentic way to make Biscochitos, but I like the combination of the orange zest, cinnamon, vanilla. It's a great holiday cookie. So hopefully you like this recipe. Here we go. To get started, here in a large bowl, I have 1 cup of vegetable shortening. You can use lard. You could also use softened butter. But what I'm going to do is mix it and whip it around to make it easier to combine with the other ingredients. Now I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 1 large egg, 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now I'm just going to give that a mix. Now I'm going to add the zest of an orange. This is a large orange, so I'm only going to zest around 1.5 teaspoons to 2 teaspoons. I'm going to add it into my bowl, give it a mix, and now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of brandy. Like I said earlier, the orange zest and brandy are optional. You could use the juice of the orange in place of the brandy, but this really does, again, add flavor to the cookie. Now I'm going to crush whole anise seeds. I'm going to eventually use a teaspoon of crushed anise seeds. I'm going to continue mixing and combining this. Here I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of coarse ground salt. If you're using fine table salt, then maybe a half teaspoon, and 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. Give it a mix and add it to your large bowl and combine well. Now I'm just going to divide the dough into 2 discs and cover it in plastic wrap. I'm going to refrigerate for 1 hour. So my cookie dough has chilled, and before I start rolling it out, I'm going to combine a ½ cup of sugar and a ½ teaspoon of ground cinnamon. This is what I'm going to dip one side of the cookie in. So on a well-floured surface, I'm going to roll out my cookie dough to around 1/4 of an inch thick. I did not do this perfectly. It could be a little thicker or even some places thinner. Once it's rolled out, I'm going to start cutting out my cookies. The cutter that I'm using today is around 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter. Using this cutter, I can get around 4 dozen cookies. Now I'm going to carefully pick up the cookie and coat one side. The coated side stays up, and place this on your cookie sheet. I'm going to repeat the process for all of my cookies. Okay, so my first batch is done. It's going into a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 13 minutes. Once the cookies have baked, I'm just going to let them sit and cool, then serve. This is probably one of my favorite holiday treats, just because the combination of the ingredients just smell like the holidays. So I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.